Do not play a trap build in 324 until you have watched this video. Whether you are a content creator, build maker, or just playing the game, there are some things in this video that you're going to want to know before you play your next trap build. Let's get into it. Today, we have reached out to ifnjeff for a little help with understanding some trap mechanics. I was doing some testing last week and was running into some problems with testing triggers and trigger interactions when using Sunblast, when not using Sunblast, and I came to the conclusion that I think the community doesn't understand some things about traps, myself included. So our resident tester, ifnjeff, jumped in and started testing, and we decided to collab on a video in order to bring this information to the community. You probably know Jeff from his build of the week, Spell Echo Hydrosphere back in 3.20. Jeff makes YouTube videos from time to time. He doesn't make them often, but when he does an incredibly in-depth dive and explains mechanics with incredible precision. So I figured, what better person could we have on to explain the trap mechanics than our good buddy Jeff? So why am I doing this? I'm looking at playing an Ice Trap of Hollowness League starter, and I'm very, very excited about the build. But in testing, I got confused about the way a few things work, and we needed to work out what's causing these quote-unquote bugs or confusions. So let's start with triggering. There are a lot of trigger effects, such as charges from charged traps, the 30 life recovery from the mastery, Tinker Skin. All of these things give us benefits when traps are triggered, but traps have to be triggered by an enemy to be counted as triggered. We want to use Sunblast in the Ice Trap of Hollowness build, but Sunblast disables enemies triggering your traps. So, Jeff, are we out of luck?
Well, we've got some tricks, but it's important to know that those effects don't actually care about the source of the trigger. They really care about which of the two trigger types are being used. The first type, which I'll call a true trigger, sets off the trap and grants each of those triggered by an enemy effects if there are any enemies within its trigger radius. The second type is just a spurious trigger, which sets off the trap without checking for enemies. As you'd expect, if an enemy is within the trigger radius of an armed trap, it will cause a true trigger, which will obviously see that enemy within its radius and grant the effects. And when most traps expire, they'll cause a spurious trigger.
Okay, so when using Sunblast, enemies don't cause true triggers, we only get the spurious triggers. However, when I'm using a Sunblast and I'm using charged traps, I still get charges sometimes. Is that related?
Totally. Let's take a look. Each Skitterbot has an ability that it will use if there's both an armed trap and an enemy within 3 meters of the bot. It has a 3-second cooldown, but each bot has their own cooldown which can stagger, although they'll both activate if they see the same trap, synchronizing the cooldowns. When used, the ability will cause all armed traps within those 3 meters to true trigger, so you'll get your triggered by an enemy effects if an enemy is within the trap's trigger radius, even with Sunblast. You can see Tinker Skin's ES recovery activating here, for example.
So oddly enough, scaling trigger radius with a Sunblast is actually relevant. This will provide much more consistent charges. You can get good trigger radius with expeditious munitions and then use the trap mastery as well, which gives you a little bit of throwing speed and a pretty good package for 4 points. So Jeff, if enemies and Skitterbots both cause true triggers and expiration causes spurious triggers, what does Chain Reaction do from Saboteur?
That is where it gets messy. Chain Reaction causes all armed traps within 2.1 meters to spurious trigger, which ignores enemies. For normal traps, this isn't a concern, because when a group of traps arm, those with enemies in their trigger radius will true trigger simultaneously, leaving only the traps with no enemies around for Chain Reaction. Skitterbots, on the other hand, seems to trigger the traps in their radius sequentially, so the first trap will get true triggered, and immediately cause the rest to spurious trigger before the bot gets to them. That limits us to 1 true trigger for the activation, which is unfortunate because the effects can otherwise occur for all traps hit by the bot.
So in the end, Chain Reaction is actually harmful for Sunblast builds, unless you really care about the area of effect. For Ice Trap of Hollowness, we really don't care about the AoE because there's so much built into the gem. With this information, it makes Trickster much more enticing due to the defensive layers that we're able to get. I'm going to go more in depth into why I chose Trickster over Saboteur in my build guide, so look forward to that coming in the future. So one more question, Jeff. How do these different trigger types affect the chance to trigger an additional time?
Interestingly, re-triggering actually does depend on what caused the trigger, rather than the trigger type. It behaves the same as Unleash support, with the trap effect having a chance to recur after its cast, which is based on your cast speed. If the trigger was caused by your trap expiring though, it will never reoccur. Weirdly, when we were testing on stream a week or 2 ago, this didn't seem to be the case, as traps expiring with Sunblast were re-triggering with about half the expected chance. But that appears to have been fixed, or a fluke.
So it sounds like Chain Reaction and re-triggering don't have any issues, but with Sunblast, Only the Skitterbot activations can reoccur, which has that low 3-second cooldown and probably isn't worth building around. This is unfortunate because the quality of Ice Trap of Hollowness is additional retriggers, which works directly in the face of how you want to build an Ice Trap of Hollowness build. It's incredibly low duration. It's the only trap with 2 seconds, makes you want to build around a Sunblast. But then a Sunblast basically makes it so you can't use retriggers. GGG, please fix. So provided that the patch notes don't change anything major, and I don't see any gems that blow me away, I'm going to be playing Ice Trap of Hollowness on League Start. So if you're interested, come check out the stream and stick around for more content here on the YouTube channel. If you want to support me, you can like this video and comment down below. Also, stop by the stream, twitch.tv/AER0___. I'm live almost every single day, and I look forward to seeing you over there. So thank you to Jeff. His information is going to be down in the description. Appreciate all the work you did for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, take care.